Welcome to the Felt Dyslexic Artist Interview. My name is Liz Buckridge. For me, as a dyslexic artist, other artists and creatives have always been my number one inspiration. In these interviews, we talk with artists and creatives who share their stories and gain insight into their process from inspiration to art tips, career building, and more. We're so lucky to listen to the wisdom of James Langston today. I'm so excited to hear about his past and future projects and share insights on life as an artist. Hi, Langston.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for talking with us today.
My pleasure.
So, I'm going to jump right in. Describe the art you make. What mediums do you primarily work in, and why do you choose those mediums?
I'm probably sitting on the cusp between fine arts and utile arts. As a furniture maker and a boat builder, I have striven to incorporate the finer aspects into that. Most of my production work has been furniture making, interiors, a certain amount of interior architecture, and but I've always really enjoyed the fine arts, and without actually having much opportunity to get close to them. But I moved to Rhode Island 30 years ago and immediately started doing figure drawing classes at the art museum. I was all my friends that I lived with were all artists. It was incredibly enticing to me. I wanted to have that skill set, and pretty soon I studied up at RISD, whatever they had in their continuing ed department. And so I did everything I could do related to drawing, anatomy, sculpture, um, carving, modeling, and so on. So so that became something that then I wanted to incorporate these three-dimensional figurative skills I was picking up, because I'm really not so much an abstract artist. I love the figure. I love classical art. I like I like the figure to tell stories. I like a good pattern, but patterns aren't abstract. Patterns are patterns. Um, so that's kind of where I'm sitting.
I love that. How did you get into making art? Can you tell us about your background and how you first became interested in art?
Um, I grew up in a very traditional sort of 1960s, 70s household where my sister was quite artistic. She interviewed at RADA. She drew things. She played the piano, and she got given guitar lessons. And I had a military dad, and I was the boy in this household. And it was kind of it wasn't presented to me as an option. But my father did love the arts, and he had a hankering, and he I spent several years like doing some amateur painting, and he liked literature, but didn't push it towards me at all, or present it as like, why don't you go to the art museum and do a course? Oh, you're quite good at drawing. Why don't you like work on it? So I went through my schooling, always hoping to find direction, but never really finding it. I ended up going to university as a geologist, which was kind of a fallback. And at the time, I was like, maybe I'd like to go into architecture. But I missed that opportunity to switch from geology to architecture. And by the time I finished my degree, or actually shortly before I finished my degree, I was like, this is not what I want to pursue. This is too technical. It's too small a field. It's going to lead me into a lifestyle which I think I wasn't really going to enjoy. I was going to have to do years out in the field, and then I was going to be in big cities. And I'm kind of a small is beautiful person, and I loved the lifestyle that I would lead at summer holidays down on the coast in England at Dawlish with my grandparents, and I tried to figure out a life that would give me something to do with my hands that was creative and active and that would keep me in a small coastal community. So I thought to myself, you know, and I'd been as a sport, I'd been a pretty big rower, been quite successful at that. And the water drew me, so I thought I could become a boat builder without anybody in my family ever having done anything with their hands, really. And so um, my family was horrified when I told them I had my degree in geology. They tried to ship me off to California, where my uncle, by pure coincidence, owned a geothermal power company, and I could have slotted in there. They wanted me to go to Stanford and get an MBA and go and work in his company. And I went out to California for a few months, and I did some technical drawing courses in a community college and went back to England, drove around to any boatyard I could find in the southwest of England, asking if I could get a training position with them. And like the last yard that was building, just doing pure wooden boat construction in basically all of South England, like offered me a traineeship. So I was an apprentice boat builder there for 3.5 years in a very sort of Victorian setup.
How did you get into your specific style of um, what you're working on now? Um, no, that's my next question, but you kind of answered it already. So let's just skip
Well,
to,
that's fine. I can explore it.
yeah, okay. So what how did you get into your specific style that you're working on now? Yeah.
Well, my in terms of my furniture design, I've I've always striven to replicate traditional techniques, solid woodwork, um, and and then I've the Renaissance is like my muse, the Baroque, maybe not so much the Baroque, but applying intensely thought out decoration to things is a wonderful way to make a better thing. And so as my skill set developed in that direction, I design wise, I have my own way of approaching a furniture project. People come to me, they want a piece of furniture. We've got this room. We hear you're a good furniture maker. We'd like a table to go in the room. Uh, it takes gathering 100 different senses to understand what a person might want, and look at the room and figure out how you can enhance the space. A lot of spaces are easier to enhance than others. Uh, but anyway, and sometimes people have ideas which one as a professional kind of knows that's probably not the best way to go. So you have to be diplomatic. You have to introduce their ideas, and you have to come up with a lot of options. Anyway, we can move on to the next
Well, it
question.
sounds like you're very collaborative with your style. Yeah. Hmm. So it's different every
Well,
time.
when you work in as a when you work on commission, I mean, I'm making a sculpture here. Nobody's talked to me about this at all. I'm just going to make it because this is something I believe in. But when somebody comes to you with a home and they want, I want a really nice kitchen. I want a really nice table. I want like a library. That you haven't quite got a blank slate because they have an idea of what they want, and there's a budget, and there's this and there's that. So the, the process of doing custom work is to present the client with options that can make them happy. Options, and hopefully an option that'll make you happy. So like within the process, typically, if somebody says, I want item X, I'll, as something fairly simple, say a table. I'll go away and I just sketch a sketch for a little bit, maybe an hour a day, for a couple of weeks, just developing ideas, hoping to find ideas that I don't like. So I can just like say, oh, that was a good idea that I don't like. And until you've built up 30 or 40 ideas. And then you go back and then it's all of a sudden you've got, oh, I've got to meet those people. Like, what am I going to do? And then you go back over your ideas and you're like, one or two of them, you're like, yeah, I really like that idea. You really like that idea. This idea is more expensive than that idea. And so typically I'll take a number of the best ideas and show the people the best ideas. And then in my head, I have like the three best options or the two best options for the project. And I'll say, this is a good option. And that's a good option. And this is what I want to build you.
Love that.
And so that's kind of my collaborative process with them.
I love that.
And and often they'll say, yeah, that looks good and this looks good. And sometimes they'll go back and find one of the other ideas has like something appealing to them. And so it's bouncing. It's like trying to make a movie. You need everybody to like come up with ideas.
Cool. Um, so I ask almost everybody this. Do you consider yourself neurodivergent or neurotypical?
I think I'm pretty straight up.
Neurotypical?
Neurotypical, yes. I
Yeah.
was I was I was very good at mental arithmetic at school. I passed all my exams. I wasn't like crazy. Nobody in my family is crazy.
Crazy?
Like, there's kind of some meme in America that like at Thanksgiving, the crazy uncle is there and the crazy this, and every family is crazy and people have got weird things going on in their families. My family, like straight down the line, sensible, conservative, fiscally sound, solid careers, steady progress through life. Yeah, there's there's not a lot of dropouts in my family history.
Well, that leads me to this question. Have you ever faced any challenges or setbacks in your art career? And how did you overcome them? Or have you just been steady Freddy?
Well, I haven't got where I'm trying to get, so the setback is that I'm still trying to get there. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, like anybody's major setback is probably their lack of application. I mean, I have evenings when I would rather go to the pub than like come up with a bright idea and work on it. And I've frequently had long periods where I'm working in a project where the artistic side is already established. Now I've drawn it. The project starts with creativity, but I do many projects, some of which have lasted multiple years. And then you get into the weeds of making it. You could I've basically done the artwork for this project, this sculpture project I'm doing here. But now I've got to do like 150 hours of carving. I've decided what it is. I've got clay things. I've conceived it. There's a few decisions to make, but you get into the weeds of actually having it happen. I know there's a lot of modern sculptors who like live in this realm of like, oh, I'm the creative genius, and I come up with my idea, I make a maquette, and I take it to the factory, and the guys there like carve on it for the next 3 months, get it cast, get it done, put it on a pedestal, put it in the middle of Barcelona. I'm not there. I'm still striving to fit in uh, my fine artwork with my day job, which is getting stuff built.
Do deadlines help you?
Uh, I'm not a big fan of deadlines. Deadlines are deadlines restrict you.
Okay. I love that.
But I mean, I've had times where like I don't know I was doing two big projects back in 2014. I was doing a kitchen, and at the same time, I had to finish a table for some people, and the deadlines for both were like July the 4th or something, and and I hadn't really got going on the table, which was going to be a couple of 100 hours work, and so there was just a really long period where I finished work on the kitchen at 5 o'clock in the evening, went and got dinner, and went to the workshop till 2:30 in the morning, making furniture, and that went for week after week after week after week, and all weekend, and then finally I got them sufficiently delivered and sufficiently done to satisfy the clients. But you don't want to work like that.
Do
You don't want to
you?
be tired. I like 8 hours sleep,
Yeah,
and you work better with 8 hours sleep.
agree. Do you have a favorite colorway for your art? And is the colorway for your art different or the same as the colors in your house?
Some of the colors in my house date way back to when I was a married person, and were chosen by my partner. Um, my own colorways. I'm kind of an earth tone pastel. I like to draw in chalky reds, and kind of a fan of grisaille, so gray shades in things, but ochres, earthy reds, terracottas. That's that's what I use extensively in my watercolor drawings. Um, in when it comes to furniture, there are appropriate places to put strong colors and other colors, highlight colors. I'm happy to use those like as needed, but but my basic my basic palette runs from Indian yellow to umber.
Your home is very warm. I mean, this particular room we're in isn't quite an example of your living room. Is like a warm umber terracotta. Yeah. So did your school system support your interest in art growing up? I know that you said that you didn't take a lot of, or your parents didn't necessarily suggest that you become an artist, but was there support in your school system growing up?
Yeah, there was a perfectly decent art department I went to a Catholic boarding school for years in England, and a couple of my friends did art there, and and I'm sure and they were fantastically talented even when they were 16, 17 years old at school. I'm sure they've gone on to have fine careers in the world of art, but I didn't stick with those art classes. I moved off to other classes,
Yeah.
did other things.
Yeah. So how do you see your
I
work?
I would
Oh,
say that the level of instruction we got when I was doing art, maybe up to the age of 12, didn't wasn't like set up to like I'm it was adequate, but it wasn't like the teachers we had were like, you can be good. They weren't inspirational in terms of like make it happen, let's go, right? Get on board, like do it, try doing it this way, practice this, practice that. It was just, they let you do stuff, and they came around and gave you a couple of tips and a bit of this and that. And, I was quite good at drawing boats for some reason. Boats were a thing I drew, but the idea of drawing a face, I had never crossed my mind. You know, now I don't draw boats, but I draw faces all the time.
you do, yeah. Boats are really hard to draw. Faces are too. Um, how do you see your work evolving or changing in the future? Do you have anything planned?
Well, I'd like to um, spend more time on the fine arts, which is the sculptural fine arts. But I also I kind of believe in like the total design concept. So the idea to do complete interiors where the where the interior architecture, the interior fabrics, the type of art which goes in the space is all part of like a cohesive style. Right.
Have you ever
As
taken a
as the Austrians strove for 100 years ago.
Have you ever taken an interior design course or
Yeah,
anything like that?
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I've
Okay.
originally, yeah, I've done
Yeah.
interior design originally.
Cool.
I did the intro course. I didn't get to the second course. Interior Design 101. I designed a great building. It was wonderful. It was a bit over the top for what the rest of the students were doing.
Doesn't surprise me. Um, is making art an emotional process for you or strategic?
I think you have to know how to do it, so that requires some strategy. But it needs to be needs to be a fluid process. You kind of have to loosen up to let the ideas come. And then you have to be aware enough to pick the good ideas or have somebody else pick the good ideas or at least pass ideas around to other people if necessary, so that you can get feedback which isn't yourself, even though you are your own guide as an artist, you're your own guide. But art really comes from understanding the world, and that's another topic. Emotionally, when you start an art project, it's hard work. And then you get some way into it and you start to see what you've created. And then it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to start kissing that sculpture. And like, yeah. Yeah. If you've done something and it makes you happy, that your own emotional response, let alone anybody else's, is very much like why you did it, hoping that you might come up with something that didn't exist before, and that you're going to go, wow, I did a good thing. Maybe not everybody's to think it was a good thing, but if you can think it's a good thing, and you're not weird, you're not like neurodivergent or something, then maybe it actually is a good thing.
Can you walk us through your creative process from idea to finished piece?
Oh, I kind of did.
Yeah, you did.
I kind of did in terms of trying to just let the mind become educated childlike, you know, that you have a compendium. I do have a compendium design wise. I have a compendium of shapes and things which please me, and somewhere it's written down that I would never be able to find it. And I also have a compendium of the totality of every design shape which can exist, which is all written on a piece of paper, which is this big. Everything that can possibly be built has shape, color, form, like all the aspects, angularity, historical setting, you know. Anyway, I have a mental resource of bits and pieces I can pick from. Like a guitarist might like have a particular riff they like, or some rhythms which a particular rhythm, like I'm going to do songs, I like to use this rhythm, and then around that rhythm they create other things. So I that's kind of my process is to find new stuff all the time, but also to understand that there's 50 things that I have an opinion about. I like this. I'm not going to use that.
So you start in your imagination or in your reserve of memory of that, and then you move to paper?
Yes, I close my eyes so that I'm in complete blackness and I try and visualize things. And then I will put ideas down on paper. But sometimes I'll just put them, sometimes I'm just doodling on paper and playing around with things. Sometimes I drive, and whilst I'm driving, it looks like I'm looking forward, but my brain is actually like visualizing. And so that's kind of like the creative design process. Of course, endless cups of coffee is an important part of
And tea.
it's an important part of that of that of that designing. I mean, I do think, I mean, art's trying to tell a story, and the most important thing for an artist is to understand the world. So my my core belief is to understand philosophy and truth, which doesn't get you any art, but the artist is always trying to say something. Every piece of art, I believe, is like, everybody has their own definition of art, but my definition of art is that anything you put extra attention into making better than it could otherwise be, you've imparted you've imparted your wisdom into it to create something special. And if you don't understand the world, it's hard to do that well. You'll become inconsistent. Your vision of, you want to find truth, not the other way around, not manipulation of people. Honesty.
Yeah. How do you combine the art you love to make and the art you sell?
You try and persuade people that they don't mind spending the extra.
Is it
Uh,
tricky?
I mean, I've done shows, and I've almost never actually got any work from showing my work in shows because it's custom work and people don't really understand what it is. Shows are great if you make like this chair, and you have like the Newport chair, and you have the Nantucket table, and and you can go at the show and you have a semi-production system in a workshop. You can go and people can look at it and say, I like that table. It's $4,000. I'll buy one. But as a custom furniture maker, it doesn't really work. And the way the furniture making and projects have always gone for the 45 years I've been doing this stuff is somebody tells somebody else that you're not going to screw up, and they need something made, so they come and ask you to make it for them.
Word of mouth.
Yeah, word of mouth.
Yeah.
Or word of mouth, or drinking with rich people.
So how do people find your art to purchase besides drinking with rich people? Do you have a website?
Heck, I do have a website. I built a website 3 years ago. It's got many pictures on it. Nobody, I don't know what it does. Nobody's ever called me because of my website. I've been featured in magazine articles. I've been featured in books with projects I've done. That stuff has almost never ever brought like a phone call. My world is pretty local. I lived the Virgin Islands. I had a work. Well, I lived down in the West Indies for a dozen years, and for the last 6, I was at a workshop in St. Croix, and I built up like a client base there, and I did some house building, I did some boat building, I did some kitchens and furniture, and I decided to focus as a furniture maker, where I could push myself further forward as a designer and builder, as opposed to just a builder, which was my goal coming here, was to be furniture maker. And then immediately I started to discover the fine arts, and my furniture became furniture plus fine arts.
Well,
As if furniture isn't a fine art, apparently.
no, it is.
But you can sit on it, so it's not a fine art.
No, I think it is. We'll put your website in the show notes anyway.
All right. Shout out to my website. It's very poorly made.
Can you share a recent project or piece of work that you're particularly happy about?
What have I done? What have I a couple of years ago, I did a bookcase when Jen was working with me. It had a swept front. It was very different to any other bookcase anybody's ever seen. It had sort of an aqua blue painted back, and it was made in and I made it in I made it in maple and then painted it all. But it was really rather spectacular. It's kind of a fun project.
Cool. How do you stay motivated?
Because I keep looking at other people's art, which I aspire to like equal. It's kind of competitive. I mean, I walk around the world with my eyes open to art constantly, to how shapes, to how buildings sit in the road, to urban design, to artwork on the wall, to like patterns in bricks, to the way wood was put into a fence, whether it was done well or not done well, to like the road surface on whether it feels appealing or not. I'm incredibly aesthetically aware, and trying to add to the good environment of good aesthetics with my own stuff. I mean, I just had 10 days of looking at of visiting 3 different cities in Europe, and looking at going to the major museums, looking at certain artworks which I've always wanted to see, and then walking around the towns and taking pictures of where they've done it well and where they haven't done it well, and drawing a few pictures, you know, immersing myself in creating opinion for myself, and enjoying places, enjoying other people's efforts. I mean, there's so billions of incredibly creative and wonderful people, by design or by accident, have made amazing things, and they're all there to be enjoyed.
Has there been any artists or creatives that have influenced or inspired your work?
Yeah, I mean, you can go from the cave paintings of Lascaux to you know, to Jimi Hendrix. Like everything's inspirational. It's out there sculpturally. You know, the marble statues from the Renaissance through to the Enlightenment of you know, I think the Baroque might get a little bit overblown in places, but the kind of purer, bolder forms of the Renaissance. Last year I went to see Giotto's work in Padua, in the Scrivegni Chapel. It was like stunning. It's slightly primitive, but it's got amazing style. You know, I like the pre-Raphael, not the modern pre-Raphaelites, but before Raphael, before the Renaissance, in the earlier in the 1300s in Siena, there were painters like Lorenzetti, the Lorenzetti brothers, who did charming figures, which I absolutely adore. There's so much art. It's all good.
Yeah, I love that.
It's not all good, but much of it is good.
Right.
But for me, it starts to go. I'm very much like I appreciate the skill of representation, and when it gets too abstract for me, I start to. If I can't read it without somebody giving me a dissertation on why I should enjoy it, that gets hard for me.
What advice would you give to an aspiring artist looking to pursue a career in the arts?
Well, I think I'd refer back to our mutual friend Luke Randall, who just said, just do it. Don't expect to get paid, just do it. Do it because you want to do it. Make stuff.
What is your favorite book, movie, song, or podcast?
Oh, my favorite song is Fragile by Sting.
Nice.
So Jimi Hendrix on When a Six Turns Out to Be Nine. It's a pretty amazing song. And there's only 1 million other amazing songs out there by a world filled with amazingly talented musicians. And artwork, I just did my tour of unit. There's in the Kunsthistorische Museum in Vienna, there's a painting by Bronzino, who was a Mannerist painter, court painter to the Medicis later in the 16th century. He did a painting of the Holy Family, and I have to say, it kind of the figures are in sort of a grisaille standing in front of a colored background, so they're almost sculptural with impeccable toning. And of all the individual artworks I saw in my latest little tour of Europe, I'd say that was like my top. I'd send a picture to Rupert.
Do you have a favorite book?
I'm kind of in love with the little book I have called The Trivium. It's not a novel. It's a little general knowledge text about philosophy and the classical subjects of grammar and logic. It's a great little book. I refer to it. I'm trying to be a better person. I'm trying to learn. I'm 69 now.
Oh, really?
But I was so dumb. Till I was 60, I was so dumb. The most important thing I've learned is to respect people, even if they're not worth respecting. Behave respectfully too.
What would you like to talk about that I didn't ask?
I have a partially written book, which is called Why Bother? And it was a joke that Ben Rowland and I had both heard this phrase from clients. Ben's another furniture maker and local artisan. And we both heard this phrase, and it just refers to a lazy attitude towards doing things well. People say, well, why should I make a nice building? Like, I'm only going to be around for another 20 years. And I would say, you're only going to be around for another 20 years. But if you're going to put a building in town, it's going to be part of the town for hundreds of years. You have a duty. Like, everything you do gets presented to the world. Present well. Make it good. I mean, none of us have enough resources. So, the economics is about, how to get by with limited resources. But have a rich attitude. Believe you're rich. Behave rich. within what you can do. Yeah, that's what I'm adding.
Thank you so much, Langston. You're amazing. Thank you for letting us into your studio today. And I felt inspired for sure.
You did?
Yeah,
Okay.
I always feel inspired around you.
I'm glad.
And we'll see you next time.
Next time, I look forward to it.
Yeah. Yay!